Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present about economics. And the first topic is Trumponomics, with Trump's tariff impacts between the United States and Taiwan. Under the Donald Trump administration, the United States has adopted the policy of America First, emphasizing trade protectionism and reciprocal tariffs on major trading partners. For tariff policies, the concept of tariff. Tariff is defined as a tax on imported goods, and it is specifically a tax levied on goods that produce abroad and taxed and subsequently sold domestically. And when the tariff is imposed, it raises the domestic price of the products, which is above the world price. And domestic price will be increased by the exact amount of tariffs. And for the reciprocal tariffs, it is actually mirror tariffs, which the U.S. set duties on imports for Taiwan equal to the tariffs which Taiwan applies to the U.S. exports. And for the examples, when Donald Trump, during April, President Trump announced tariffs which Donald Trump imposed 32% of tariffs on Taiwanese imports, and this affected Taiwan's semiconductor and tech exports, since the U.S. is its largest market, which is 25.7%. And for Taiwan's response, they negotiate to improve the tariff rates, support affected industry domestically, and exploring new U.S. and Taiwanese arrangement to stabilize trade. Here are the examples which, as I mentioned earlier, and yes, the next page, please. Okay, for the alternative policy instruments. We will compare tariffs with quotas as tools for trade protection. Tariffs raises the price of imports. Domestic consumers pay more, reducing demand for foreign goods. The government also collects the revenue from the tax. And for quotas, import quotas, caps, it puts a cap on numbers of imports allowed, and once the quota is filled, no more imports can enter, and this creates scarcity and driving up the price without generating government income. And in what circumstances which a country may prefer a quota instead of a tariff? A country might prefer a quota over a tariff when it wants to guarantee strict quantitative limits on imports to protect a domestic industry from sudden surges, or use quotas as a bargaining tool in trade negotiations. Unlike tariffs, quotas provide a certainty about the maximum volume of imports, even if the foreign producers lower prices to offset tariffs. And how do these two policies differ from their impact on market efficiency and government revenue? For tariffs, it raises import prices, which a consumer will buy less, and domestic suppliers will supply more, which creates a new equilibrium forms. And it will cause inefficiency, which is greatly lost, but limited to the tax wedge. And this impacts depends on price elasticity as elasticity demand cuts imports sharply, and elastic demand means smaller cuts but higher consumer cost. And quotas are set a fixed cap on imports, which market cannot naturally adjust, and creates a bigger. Quotas also creates bigger inefficiencies since scarcities raises price without government revenue, and it also creates extra profits which go to foreign exporters and license holders, but not the government. For graphical analysis, how the U.S. reciprocal tariffs and U.S. import markets affects the market. Here is the chart, and this is how the tariff changes affects the domestic price and import quantity. Here are the stats, and what happens in the market is like when the tariffs was raised by 11.5%, it makes imported good more expensive. Consumers buy less because of higher prices and demand contracts. And domestic producers supply more at a higher price, but not enough to fully replace imports. And imports will shrink from 4.92 billion units to 3.99 billion units, a drop of 19%. And the government collects tariffs revenue on their remaining imports, but the economy loses efficiencies due to reduced trade. And now is the graphical analysis for Taiwan, how it affects the Taiwanese market. First, the curve shift mechanism. The U.S. import demand curve shifts downward, and by the tariff amount, this reflects reduce our willingness to import at each price due to higher land costs. A new equilibrium, which here this is the equilibrium. Taiwanese exporters receive 0.78 per unit, and but the U.S. buyers pays $0.93, and quantity export falls from 8.09 billion to 6.01 billion units, and a tax wedge creates a gap between the buyer price and seller revenue, and exporter impact. The producer surplus shrinks, and fewer units are sold at a lower margin. For deadweight loss, it mutually benefits which no longer occur, and for elastic sectors, it suffer more than the inelastic ones. And the strategic implications for Taiwan. For short term, exporters face margin compression and avoid volume decline. For medium term, firms may diversify market or shift production abroad. And for long term, Taiwan accelerates the investment in US-based facilities, such as TSMC Arizona, by bypassing tariffs. For welfare effects on Taiwan, here, for example, here, impact on customers, the indirect price effects. Consumers in Taiwan do not directly pay US tariffs, but exporters may pass on costs through reduced income and higher domestic prices. And if firms reallocates goods back to Taiwan, Taiwan's domestic market, it will oversupply and temporarily lower the prices for some goods, such as electronics. And it will also reduce variety on export-oriented firms, which they may cut production, which leads to fewer product options domestically. Impacts on Taiwan's producers. The revenue will decline, which exporters receive a lower net prices due to tax wedge, reducing profitability, and quantity contraction, which export volumes falls, which especially in elastic sectors such as consumer electronics, while inelastic goods like semiconductors are less affected. And for strategic adjustments, firms may diversify markets to the EU and the ASEAN countries and shifting production abroad and absorb the costs to maintain the US market share. And for the last, producer surplus loss, which the tariff reduces the area of producer surplus in supply and demand terms, creating a deadweight loss. Impacts on Taiwan's government, as there are no direct tariff revenue. Tariffs are collected by the US government but not Taiwan. Fiscal pressure, which Taiwan may need to subsidize affected industries to provide tax relief and fund diversification programs. And for political leverage, reciprocal tariffs signal US bargaining power, forcing Taiwan to negotiate trade concessions or adjust policy. And for the long-time policy shift, it encouraged Taiwan to deepen ties with other partners and invest domestic innovation and strengthen resilience against external shocks. And how does the export decline influence Taiwan's overall economic welfare? GDP falls, and which export drive. As export drive 70% of Taiwan's economy, the decline will slow the growth, and jobs and wage will cut short as trade-dependent industries face layoffs and lower the pay. Producer lost profits as a reduced efficiency and smaller producer surplus, and consumers harmed as weaker income and fewer product choices, possible short-term price shocks. And the government will be strained as there are lower tax revenue, fiscal pressure, and no tariff income. Overall, the impact will be a broad loss of income, employment, and bargaining power, with only partial relief from the diversification in the long run. Welfare effects on the United States. First, impacts on consumers. There will be high price on products as tariff acts like as a tax on imports. Groceries, electronics, machinery, all the price will increase, and a reduced variety as with fewer imports, customers face less choice, especially sectors where Taiwan is a major supplier. And income effects, higher living costs reduce disposable income and lowering consumer welfare. And impacts on US producers, mixed outcomes such as a protected industry benefit from reduced foreign competition and can raise domestic output. And import-dependent industries such as tech firms relying on Taiwanese semiconductors can face higher input costs and reducing competitiveness. And export retaliation risk, which Taiwan may impose counter tariffs, hurting the U.S. exporters, and efficiency loss as producer surplus gains in protected sectors are offset by losses in industry reliance on imports, creating a deadweight loss. And for the impact on the U.S. government, revenue gain as tariff generates a direct income for the U.S. Treasury, unlike quotas, and political leverage will be reciprocal tariffs are used as a bargaining tool to pressure trade against partners to lower their own trading barriers. Macroeconomic risk, which is prolonged tariffs slow GDP growth, increase market volatility, and risk of retaliation that undermines U.S. exports. And policy burdens, which is the government may face pressure to subsidize affected industries or manage inflationary effects on customers. And to evaluate the net welfare effects, consumers pay higher prices and loses choices. Producers gain some production, but other faces higher costs and retaliation. For the government, they gain tariff revenue and bargaining power, but overall the efficiency falls, and the net effect will be tariffs revenue helps, but deadweight loss and higher prices overall make welfare declines. Okay, and this is topic 2.
Hello, my name is Ivan Petrenia. Today I will present an economic analysis of how TSMC became the dominant producer in the most advanced semiconductor nodes, and how microeconomic theory help us understand its behavior. I will discuss pricing, cost structure, long-run profitability, global expansion, and how potential competitors may change this market. To begin with, TSMC clearly show near monopoly characteristic in the 3 nanometers and below segment, extremely high capital expenditures, dependence on EUV technology, and superior yields create strong barriers to entry. At the same time, the surge in demand for AI and high performance computing significantly increased TSMC pricing power and accelerates investment in new fabs worldwide. TSMC manufactures the world's most advanced chips, which are essential by AI systems, high-performance computing, and flagship smartphones. Its top clients, Apple, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm, depend entirely on TSMC for leading-edge nodes. Each new fab requires tens of billions of dollars, meaning very few firms can afford to compete in this technology race. In the 3 nanometers and below segment, TSMC essentially behaves as a monopolist, and monopolists choose the output level where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Once the optimal quantity is determined, the corresponding price is set on the demand curve. This mechanism explains why advanced chips are sold at a premium compared to more competitive markets. On a monopoly diagram, the firm profit is represented by the rectangle between the monopoly price and the average cost at the chosen quantity. However, monopoly power also creates inefficiency. Because the monopolist restricts output relative to perfect competition, added with loss emerges a portion of social welfare. This is not realized. And this is a typical outcome for the monopolist markets. Um, Recently, demand for advanced chips has skyrocketed due to the rapid growth of AI. Companies like Nvidia, OpenAI, and global cloud providers are consuming unprecedented volumes of leading-edge chips. This shifts the demand curve to the right, increase both the profit maximizing output and the monopoly price. As a result, TSMC profit grow at the company given gains even stronger initiatives to expand capacity worldwide. One of the TSMC core advantages lies in its ability to absorb enormous fixed cost. Building fabs, installing EUV equipment, developing new process technologies, and maintaining large R&D teams require massive investments. Most of those costs are sunk, and the four major economic barrier that prevents new firms from entering the market. Variable costs include wafers, chemical gases, electricity, ultra-pure water testing, packaging, and waste associated with lower yields. Although these costs are significant in absolute terms, they are still small compared to the overwhelming fixed capital expenditures. This relationship between fixed and variable cost is important for understanding TSMC's scale advantages. High fixed costs combined with the relatively low marginal costs drive average cost downward as output increases. TSMC also benefits from learning by doing. As product scales up, yields improve and costs fall further. These give the industry natural monopoly characteristics, where one large producer is more efficient than several smaller ones. This is a key reason TSMC dominates the advanced node segment. TSMC maintains long-run economic profits because it operates at lower average cost than its competitors. Superior yields, advanced process maturity, and enormous sunk costs give TSMC an economic advantage that is extremely difficult to replicate. Long-term contracts with the companies like Apple and Nvidia and stability to revenue and the further spurt profits. Uh, Another reason TSMC continues to outperform is its technological leadership. Even today, Intel and Samsung struggle to match TSMC yields level and process stability at 3 nanometers. This technological gap translates directly into cost advantage and higher margins. Building new fabs in Arizona, Kumamoto, and Dresden represent long-run strategic decisions. These investments reshape global capacity and alter TSMC's long-run average cost curves. Such decisions require years of planning and carry significant financial risk. In the short run, TSMC constrained by its existing capacity. Even if demand rises suddenly, the company cannot instantly build a new fab. In the long run, however, TSMC can expand the supply curve by adding new manufacturing facilities, albeit at extremely high cost. As of today, the advanced node market is essentially near monopoly. Samsung and Intel have not yet achieved company stability of yield at leading-edge nodes despite heavy investment. This leaves TSMC as the overwhelmingly dominant supplier. If Intel or Samsung eventually succeed in developing reliable 2-3 nanometers technologies, the structure of the market would shift. Instead of monopoly-like behavior, we would see an oligopoly. Higher total output and lower price would follow through the price would still remain above marginal cost. Competition among advanced chip manufacturers is likely to resemble kernel competition, where firms compete in output quantities. Bertrand price competitive is unlikely because chip making is capacity constrained and highly differentiated. This means competition would increase, but not to the point of eliminating profitability. Governments around the world are becoming increasingly concerned about over-reliance on the single chip manufacturer. As a result, we see a large subsidies we see large as a result, we see a large subsidies on sharing initiatives and the creating of strategy reserves. These policies reflect both economic and geopolitical priorities. Customers, especially Apple and Nvidia, respond to supply risk by securing long-term capacity agreements. Some firms even co-invest with TSMC to guarantee access to future production. This reduces uncertainty and stabilization pricing. This reduced uncertainty and stabilized pricing. Competitor in place. Ah, for competitor like Samsung and Intel, catching up require massive increases in R&D funding, improvement in yield, and strong strategies alliance. State support is often essential. Without these elements, it's nearly impossible to challenge TSMC at the leading edge. TSMC does face risk rising labor and energy costs in overseas fabs, yield uncertainty in the new nodes, and the possibility that AI demand may fl fluctuate. However, its dominance in advanced manufacturing is built on extremely high capex, economies of scale, and unmatched technological leadership. Even if new competition emerges, TSMC will remain a certain player in the global semiconductor ecosystem for years to come.
Is the topic 3, and the topic is air pollution and negative externalities, why the market fails and how to fix it. So first, my real world ex example is air pollution from Taiwan's power plants and factories, and they produce PM 2.5 and other harmful pollutants. There's case negative externalities such as health problems, high medical bills, lower productive, and bad air quality. In this case, producers is the power plants and healthy in industries. Yeah, and the victims is nearby residents, the healthcare system and society. And the key issue is that polluters only consider their private costs. They ignore the external cost to others. So the market produces too much pollution, not the society optimal level. So without government action, firms choose the point where demand increases MPC protecting QP, but the real cost to society is MSC equal MPC plus external cost, and the best level is Q. So we can see QP is bigger than Q, so it means it's too much pollution. The triangle behind MSC, MPC, and demand is the DWL. So in here, who gains? The answer is the firms. Yeah, and because they don't pay for the external damage. So who lost? The answer is residents and society who suffer health and environmental costs. So here is the correcting the market failure, and here I have two things. The first is the command and control rules. Government can set pollution standards, require filters, or do inspections, and the pro is clear and effective, and the cons is the inflexible and may be costly. And second is the preference tax. Yeah, and a tax is added per until of pollution. This shifts MPC upward until MPC plus tax equal MSC. If the tax equal the external cost, output move to Q, and the advantage is cost effective, flexible, and creates government revenue. And the challenge is hard to measure the exact external costs. And my real example is Taiwan's air pollution control fees, and Victoria's pay fees based on how much they pollute, and the goal is to make them consider social costs. And the effect is PM 2.5 improved in some areas, and the firms upgraded equipment. Yeah, and the challenge is fees may be too low. Pollution give across regions, and small firms is struggle with compliance costs. And last is extended thinking, and when pollution crosses borders, it becomes an internationally externality, and one country alone cannot solve it. So we need cooperation such as cross-border carbon markets like EU and ETS, and climate agreements. And there's like global pavilions tours, putting a price on carbon. Challenge include fairness, material range, and nationally interest. So this our presentation, and thanks for listening.
And this is the end of the presentation. Thanks for listening.